I believe mainstream media is wrong in the way it's handling Donald Trump. When there was that footage that emerged of him going down that ramp where he looked all sort of hunched and vulnerable, that's a sort of an open goal for his detractors because he sort of looks kind of ridiculous and vulnerable and frail. But in focusing on that, it's trivializing and banalizing political debate. You're sort of being personal. If you're sort of like, look at him shuffling down that ramp, you're acknowledging that the level that the political conversation is taking place on is sort of ridicule and sort of trivial conversation about a person's physical appearance, physical abilities, and etc., etc. So it's hard then to shift the focus to what's important. Redistribution of power, redistribution of wealth, change in public institutions so they're a better reflection of the populations that they're supposed to cater for. Suddenly these things are also trivialised. I was fascinated by watching this rally, but the thing that I thought was significant, important, is that the way that he tackles the ridicule for going down that ramp slowly is funnier than anything anyone criticising him said.
To our great First Lady, I said, let me ask you a question. Was it that good, the speech, that I'm trending #1? Because I felt it was really good. No, they don't even mention the speech. They mentioned the fact that you may have Parkinson's disease. It's true. It's true.
Look, he's sort of funny, isn't he? Look at his conversational style, his manner. He's sort of at ease.
I just made a big speech. I sat for other speeches. I'm being baked. I'm being baked like a cake.
To be clear, I met Donald Trump once and spent some time with him, and I personally think the policies of Donald Trump are detrimental to ordinary American people. I think he is another president that's interested primarily in the success of transnational corporations. I think his particular brand of nationalism is sort of jingoistic and unhelpful, and like anyone, I was powerfully impacted emotionally by the kids in cages and his sort of inability to condemn obvious, overt racist tropes. However, what is problematic is that I believe that the mainstream media is being dismissive of Donald Trump, not acknowledging the many things that he does that are very, very skillful, including his ability to engage in public discourse in a way that is personal, amusing, accessible, and that's, I think, leaving democratic candidates and democratic ideas in the dust. The other thing that's problematic is that there is no willingness to acknowledge that the preceding administration didn't meaningfully improve on other right-wing governments. I'm old enough to remember when George W. Bush was president. It's only 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know, 12 years ago. He was demonised as a sort of like, or vilified as a kind of like dopey, daft, shucks, thigh-slapping, dim-wit cowboy cokehead, and I in fact joined in with that at the MTV Awards that I was hosting at that time. Now Donald Trump is a sort of on a continuum with that sort of pathway of sort of macho kind of Republican presidents, although of course he is a sort of an entity unto himself, a kind of demagogue, detached, individualistic, weird phenomena. There are moments in this video that are sort of somewhat jaw-dropping, mostly when he riles up the crowd to condemn the mainstream media.
These people are sick, the fake news.
But you know what? It wasn't that long ago that saying that the media couldn't be trusted was a discourse that entirely belonged to the left. You can't trust the mainstream media. They're the shills of big business. They're there to keep the public docile. Noam Chomsky, who is hardly right-wing, would say that the media is a pillar of establishment whose role is to keep the populace spellbound and distracted so that the interests of the powerful can continue uninterrupted beyond the reach of democratic process. This is true whether Joe Biden is president, Obama is president, or Trump is president. Doesn't alter. So like, I feel like that the vitriol that's being directed at Trump is sort of somehow disingenuous, because if it was sincere, you would have to extend it to Democratic candidates and Democratic presidents who are not sufficiently different from Trump to warrant exalted status. A true opponent of Donald Trump, or indeed any centrist Democratic or Republican candidate, would be genuinely interested in redistributing the resources of America, reevaluating the institutions and systems of American democracy, and creating a fairer society where ordinary people have purchase and impact on the decisions and power that controls their own lives. Nobody's interested in that conversation. What I think people are interested in is having a more diplomatic, superficially attractive president, so that people that are in positions of relative privilege can continue to live their lives feeling like, well, look, we've done something. We dealt with Donald Trump, without ever acknowledging that the reason Trump is able to galvanize people is because he's a good public speaker who's able to have the kind of conversations that the mainstream media are facilitating, i.e. personal, trivial, banal attacks. For me, the solution would be to focus solely on policies, ideas, and changes that would improve the lives of ordinary Americans, instead of engaging in this territory of sort of mudslinging and personal attacks.
West Point is beautiful, right on the Hudson River. But after an hour, General that runs it is a fantastic guy.
He's like a normal bloke. That's like, the General's a fantastic guy. It's sort of like compelling and interesting. If you were to watch Joe Biden in a similar situation, I don't think it would be as interesting. Furthermore, Joe Biden's been in government for 8 years as vice president under Obama. And under Obama, drone strikes, Ferguson, it wasn't like everything was cool. We had everything straight. We'd sorted it out. We had an equal society. Like whether you're talking about Cornel West, anybody like sort of left-wing American academics, no one thinks that the Obama administration delivered. Most people prefer Barack Obama, or a significant number of people prefer Barack Obama as a statesman, as a diplomat, as a person that you'd want to hang out with, seems charming and well-intentioned. But when you look at that 8 years of government compared to this 4 years of government, no doubt Donald Trump has instigated and presided over policies that have been detrimental, and I'm no fan of Donald Trump. But what I'm saying is that the nature of these attacks is not addressing the core problem, neither is it acknowledging the populist appeal that he is continuing to demonstrate mastery of. And I would suggest, and I'm obviously not alone in suggesting this because I think it's kind of borderline obvious, will probably lead him to electoral victory in November, in spite of the disruptions, brutality, chaos that we've seen in America in recent months.
I remember when another president, nice man, threw up in Japan, and they did slow motion replays. True, right?
That crowd is genuinely laughing, not the phony conference laughs that we're used to seeing in Vickers speeches or politician speeches. They're cracking up laughing. Furthermore, when they're booing like that at the media, wow, that's some intense stuff. I think that the issue is that any opponent of Donald Trump that has serious intention of displacing him or acknowledge you're dealing with someone who knows how to play this game in a way that's not been played before extremely well, is galvanizing his support brilliantly, is an orator of considerable skill, is able to engage in the games of derision that are being facilitated by sort of late night talk shows, etc., with aplomb. And if you're interested in a different kind of politics, then I think it is prudent to acknowledge that Donald Trump has been created by inertia in the mainstream, centrism, and the Democratic left's abandonment of the interests of underprivileged people across the board. That's what creates Donald Trump. And until that's addressed meaningfully, in all likelihood, there's going to be more Donald Trump.
I don't want that, General. Now, he's standing there, big, strong guy, and he's got these shoes, but they're loaded with rubber on the bottom.
Loaded with rubber. Like, look at the bit where he talks about the general shoes being loaded with rubber. The bit where he talks about calling up his missus and her sort of taking the piss out of him, saying that all of the news coverage was about you walking down that ramp. Firstly, it appeals to his perspective as a kind of individualistic narcissist. It means that he can attack them on a territory that they've created. I seriously think that if you want to supersede, overthrow Donald Trump, don't fight on the territory where he can directly respond to personal attacks, because I think he's better at that than they are. And so you're fighting him on his own turf. You know, he's able to personally respond to personal attacks. It would be much more difficult if the debate became about the sort of the social, political, economic reality of America. It would also be a lot easier if there was a political movement that was interested in real change. I wonder if the Democrats, for example, will meaningfully back the Black Lives Matter campaign, if they'll be able to convey the significance of the intentions of that movement in a manner that Trump supporters would recognise is also beneficial to them, that everyone benefits from a fairer, more democratic society. Everyone benefits from a society where the most vulnerable have more access to power, and that it has been a continued game of mainstream politics to pit people on the lower rungs of the social and economic ladders against one another on the basis of religion or class or colour, when in fact the people on those rungs have much more in common with one another than they have with people at the top, on the top rungs of those ladders. But the reality is that whether you vote for Democrat or Republican, you're voting for the interests of powerful people. There is some variation, there are some cosmetic differences, but they are not significant enough. And if you are interested in a different type of government, then you need a different kind of discourse, different kind of policies, different kind of politicians, and a very different approach to Donald Trump. If this is the game that's going to be played in the build-up to the next election, he will win it.